Hello. Today what we're going to be doing is we are going to be finding the slope between 2 points. And the way we find the slope between any 2 points is by using the slope formula. So what this means is anytime you have 2 points, there is some line that goes between them, that goes through them. To find the slope of this line, we use the slope formula, which I have written right here. We use the letter M to describe slope. I have looked for a long time to figure out why we use M. I have not found a good reason, so we're just going to go with it. M is slope. The way we find our slope is it says y2 minus y1, which just means subtract the two y coordinates, divided by x2 minus x1, which means subtract the two x coordinates, and then divide. So y2 and y1 just means y2 is the y coordinate of the second point, y1 is the y coordinate of the first point. Same thing with x's. That little 2 means x2 is the x coordinate of the second point, and x1 is the x coordinate of the first point. So something I like to do to start off with these is label what x1, y1, x2, and y2 are. So my first point, remember the first number you see is your x. So we're going to call 10 x1. And then my other coordinate in there would be y1, y coordinate of the first point. Same idea with the second point. 1 is x2. And 6 is y2. I also like to write the formula every time. You don't necessarily have to write it out, but I like seeing exactly where to plug things in. So I'm going to write it out. And then something else I like to do is I like to kind of preset things up with the minus signs so I don't forget. So if I start by plugging my y's, y2 is 6, minus y1 is 5. Same idea with the x's. x2 is 1, x1 is 10. From here, to simplify this, I just need to do the subtraction. Up top, 6 minus 5 is 1. 1 minus 10 is negative 9. Whenever you have a negative fraction, I'm not going to be too picky. You can put that negative with the top number or with the bottom number. Usually you see it written with the top number, so I'm going to just write my final answer that way. My M, or my slope, is negative 1 over 9. I know a lot of times we switch things into decimal form, but for slope, you'll see when we get to graphing, it's more convenient for us to leave it as a fraction. So please leave your slope as a fraction. Let's try another one. I'm going to write out my formula just so I have it. I'm going to kind of preset it up with that minus sign on top and bottom like I showed you before. Labeling our points. My x1 and x2 are both 3. That's just a coincidence. My y1 is 17, and my y2 is 3. So then let's plug things into the slope formula where they go. y2 minus y1 is going to look like 3 minus 17. x2 minus x1 is going to look like 3 minus 3. Now let's do our subtraction. 3 minus 17 is negative 14. 3 minus 3 is 0. Now, typically, to simplify, if we can, we reduce or divide, but we have a number being divided by 0. A number being divided by 0 cannot happen. And so since we are dividing by 0, our slope isn't going to be a number. Our slope is going to be undefined. This means in picture form, our line is a perfectly vertical line. So if you are dividing by 0, that means you are going to have an undefined slope since we cannot divide by 0. Let's try a couple more. So I'm going to go ahead and write the formula out just so we have it for both of them. And kind of preset things up for us. Again, you do not have to write the formula every time, but I think it's very helpful. Okay, let's label our coordinates. My first point, x1 is 8. And y1 is 18. For my second point, x2 is negative 1. y2 is 3. So let's plug things in where they go. y2 minus y1 is going to look like 3 minus 18. And then down in the denominator, x2 minus x1 is going to look negative 1 minus 8. Now let's go ahead and do our subtraction. 3 minus 8 is negative 15. Negative 1 minus 8 is negative 9. If you left it as negative 15 over negative 9, technically you're right, but there's a better way to write that answer is if we reduce. The biggest number I can divide both of these by is 3 evenly. And then also, since they're both negative, I can divide them both by a negative. So I'm going to reduce this fraction by dividing both numbers by negative 3. Negative 15 divided by negative 3 is positive 5. Negative 9 divided by negative 3 is positive 3. So your best final answer is m equals 5 over 3. If it was something multiple choice, that's probably how the answer would be written. If you wrote it as negative 15 over 9 on something where it wasn't multiple choice, I'd still be okay with that too. All right, let's try one more of these and then we'll look at a word problem. So let's label our x's and y's. This is my first x coordinate. This is my second x coordinate. This is my first y coordinate. This is my second y coordinate. Let's put them in the formula. y2 minus y1 is going to look like negative 9 minus 5. x2 minus x1 is going to look like negative 8 minus negative 5. So you do have two minus signs in a row. That happens when you're subtracting a negative, and that is okay. A lot of times people forget to write that second minus sign. Let's do our subtracting. Negative 9 minus 5 is negative 14. Negative 8 minus negative 5. Remember that minus and negative is like adding, so you can think of this as negative 8 plus 5. Either way, you're going to get negative 3. If you left your answer as negative 14 over negative 3, that'd be okay. But like I said, if it's multiple choice, they're probably going to reduce it. There's no number I can divide both 14 and 3 evenly by other than 1, but I can reduce by getting rid of that negative, so I'm going to divide by negative 1. Negative 14 divided by negative 1 is positive 14. I'm going to make that look a little bit prettier. Let's try that again. There we go. Negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3. So then the best final answer for my slope is m equals 14 over 3. You're also going to encounter some word problems that deal with slope. And so what the thing with the word problem is the points aren't going to be written out as ordered pairs like you see up here. They're going to be kind of hidden. But if you read through the problem, you're going to be able to write the points out yourself and then use the slope formula from there. Let's take a look. In the year 1990, a house sold for $130,000. In the year 2015, the same house sold for $165,000. If X represents the year and Y represents the value of the house, what is the slope of this data and what does the slope represent? So I think it's easiest to find out what X and Y mean. X is the, I crossed that out, did not mean to do that. Let's try that again. X is the year. So like, for instance, if we had something dealing with today, X would be 2020, but that's not what's going on in the problem. Y represents the value of the house. The value of the house is how much money it's worth. So let's now read back through our problem carefully and see if we can find the information we need. In the year 1990, so that's going to be an X coordinate. It's the first X coordinate we see. Let's call it X1. A house sold for $130 or $30,000. That's, since it's the value of the house, it's going to be Y coordinate. It's the first one we see. So that's going to be Y1. So just writing out that information as a point, my first point is going to look like 1990, comma, I'm not going to draw the dollar sign, but you know it's there, 130,000. That is one of my points. And if you'd like to label them X1, Y1, you may do so. Keep reading through the problem to find our other point. In the year 2015, that's the second year we've talked about, so that's going to be X2. Go ahead and start writing my point out while I'm at it. The same house sold for $165,000. So that is going to be my Y2 because it's the second house value we've seen. Now that I have my points written out, hey, this looks like what we've been doing. Good news. So now we can use the slope formula, which I'm going to write out for us. I'm going to give us some space because these numbers are a little bigger than what we were dealing with before. All right, Y2 minus Y1 is going to be $165,000 minus $130,000. Down in the denominator is the years. X2 is 2015. X1 is 1990. Even though the numbers are bigger, the process is still the same. I'm going to subtract top numbers. 165,000 minus 130,000 is 35,000. And then bottom numbers, 2015 minus 1990 is 25. We do want to go ahead and reduce this. It actually divides evenly. You can divide both numbers by 25. And so when you do that, up top you get 1,400. On the bottom you get 1. And just like we've talked about before, anytime you've divided something by 1, it's the same as just the top number. So for 1,400. So our slope is 1,400 or 1,400 over 1. That takes care of what is the slope of this data. The second question it asks is, what does the slope represent? So I didn't write units throughout this, but the top number has been money all along. The bottom number has been years. And so what we see here is that for every 1 year, the value of the house, since it's positive, is going up by $1,400. Let's write that out. Every 1 year, or every year, you don't have to write the word 1, the value of the house increases or goes up, however you want to say it, by the top number of our slope there, which is $1,400. That answers the what does the slope represent part. That is it for today for finding slope. Have a fantastic day.